Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room. Boy, do I wish this movie felt more outdated than it does. So, another commissioned review, Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. This is one of the few Stanley Kubrick movies that I like. I'm on the record as liking. That said, I have not watched it in a very long time. I don't think I've seen it since the last time I watched it in college. I'm like maybe if I'd seen it since then, it was like maybe once like 15 years ago. It's been a while. I definitely have not watched this since my kid was born. It's been a while. But yeah, black comedy, a very difficult genre to balance, especially for me. Most black comedies have a tendency to do one of two things that don't work for me. Either the subject matter is so dark that it makes me that it isn't able to elicit chuckles out of me, at least not with the ways it's trying to do, or it is just doing so much to try and offset the darker aspects that it like you lose the dark part. It's like my experience with dark comedy is either it's way too dark or it's way too comedic, and trying to balance that is real hard. Some things do. Four Lions is kind of my go-to example of a really excellent dark comedy. But this is another one. This is a really good dark comedy. And it's just overall, it is livelier than a lot of Kubrick movies. I think a fair bit of that comes down to performances across the board. There's not a weak performance in this entire thing, but there's just so much energy coming off of folks like Slim Pickens and George C. Scott, and some of the characters that Peter Sellers is playing for sure. But even some of the side characters, like, you know who I found really fascinating in this one is a character I have not thought that much about, was a Ripper. The guy, the Air Force Base commander who actually issues the order for the bomber. Oh, I should explain the story for people who don't know. Let me finish talking about this guy first. So let me put it this way. I did laugh, but boy, would I have laughed with more comfort if the dude, when he talked, didn't remind me so much of Pete Hegseth. He really did. But anyways, if you don't know the plot for this, an Air Force commander initiates orders to his wing of bombers that are currently in flight around Russia, because this is during the Cold War, to go and attack their primary and secondary targets with nuclear weapons. In order to do this, he makes use of what is called Plan R, which is a contingency plan that is meant to only be used in the event of a sneak attack on Washington where the entire chain of command has been disrupted. And under that circumstance, it grants authority to commanders like General Ripper to be able to issue the order, because presumably president, cabinet, whatever, are all dead. Well, he initiates that plan even though there has been no attack on Washington. And part of that plan involves the planes cutting off their communications out of fear of being misdirected by Russians pretending to be Americans. And basically Ripper's the only one who can call them back, because you need a special code to be able to even contact these planes to give them the order to turn around. So he has hunkered down and locked down his base. He's basically gone out of his way to start World War III with the intent that the military brass in Washington will come to the conclusion that they can't stop the planes. Therefore, their best option is to go all in on the attack and just try and wipe out Russia before they have a chance to retaliate. That's what he wants to happen. What ends up happening is just a whole lot of bickering in the war room, primarily between George C. Scott as General Buck Turgidson. I'm not sure if I had gotten that joke last time I saw this, but yes, Buck Turgidson, who is, he's very hawkish. He's not necessarily chomping at the bit, like at the opportunity to bomb Russia, but like he basically does think that the outcome that Ripper wants is the thing that they should do. And then there is the president, who is played as kind of a hemming and hawing, I don't know about this sort of character by Peter Sellers. Peter Sellers plays 3 characters in this. I actually enjoy the fact that the president is pretty downplayed. His the amount of overdone, weak politician who doesn't understand the gravity of the situation or won't listen to to the strong man in the room or whatever, could have been way overdone. The president is actually played pretty straight. Like, his role in the story is to be the guy who says, wait, let's moderate, let's find the other option. And actually, honestly, one of the things I appreciate about this film as a whole, rewatching it now, is it does not point the blame at any one specific element involved in this. I'm not going to say it's not political. It is political. It's anti-nuke, it's anti-war, but it's not interested in assigning blame for why everything goes completely wrong on one component or another. I could see this in the hands of another filmmaker where it very easily gets painted as the warmongering generals are the big problem. And the president, thank God the president's there. Or it could have been the generals are right and the president's this weak little dude who doesn't get it. Or any number of other things. The comparison in my brain that I found myself making was Don't Look Up, which part of why that movie was freaking insufferable was because it was far more interested in dunking on the specific people that it felt like blaming for climate change, which the whole thing was a metaphor for, than anything else. This doesn't care whose fault it is. If anything, it kind of blames everybody involved. But it is vehemently anti-nuke, anti-war, but it's not interested in pushing an agenda with its politics. It is political, but it is not agenda-driven, which is a really hard thing to manage. And that's not to say that nobody involved, or even Kubrick himself, didn't have an agenda in mind, but it is not evident in the way that the various component parts of this are portrayed. I suppose you could make an argument that it's kind of anti-military, at least to an extent. Because, there's General Ripper and Turgidson. There's also a commander who shows up and just has some of the most ridiculous lines. I think you started some kind of pre-verted uprising around here. You try and do any pre-versions in there, I'll blow your head off. I can't remember that character's name, but I love him. But at the same time, there is a lot of, I'm not sure it's reverence, but respect given to, say, the crew of the B-52 bomber that we keep cutting back to, the one where Slim Pickens is the pilot. There is a lot of respect given to, the work that these men are doing. So I suppose you could argue there's a little bit of finger pointing at the upper brass of the military, but there's plenty of finger pointing going on at Russia as well, because we have the Russian premier Kissoff, God, the names in this, who never appears but is always on the phone, on the other end of the phone with the president, or the ambassador who's, here's one of the things that I appreciate about this. And at some point in the future, I've been thinking about it for years. At some point in the future, I'm gonna do a main channel video talking about movies that try to depict the end of the world. Because I think most movies fail at it, at least for my tastes. I think unless you have a nihilistic streak, most movies that end in the end of the world, spoilers, sorry, it's not a new movie. It's 60 years old at this point. But most movies that have the end of the world depicted tick me off for one reason or another. A big part of why this works is, as I said, pretty much everybody is to blame. Part of the reason for that is that everyone we are shown is someone mixed up in this. I think you could argue we don't see a single civilian in this entire movie. The closest we come is General Turgidson's secretary, who's obviously still kind of mixed up in this whole military thing, even though she's not an officer. But, she's treated like a sex object by Turgidson. So there is this overall feeling that, yes, the world's going to be destroyed. But the world as we've been shown it, and who is populating it, are people who it doesn't feel like that big of a loss. which helps if you're going to try and do a comedic take on the end of the world. Because I need to not go too far down this tangent, but like one of the reasons I hate the ending of Cabin in the Woods is that for as good as it is for most of its runtime, when it makes the decision to destroy the world, I hate it because the film earlier established too much of the outside world. It establishes civilians. It establishes children. It establishes people who I am not okay with the movie having this nihilistic ending that just says, it's all garbage. They should all die. And I'm like, no, you showed me kids. So no, this realizes to not do that. So like, if you say you destroy the world and this is the world you show me and these are the people in it, yeah, I'm going to be willing to laugh at it. So other performances from Sellers, I think actually my favorite performance he gives is as Mandrake, this RAF basically exchange program that the Americans and the British have. So Mandrake just has this wonderfully done like posh stiff upper lip, accent is just perfectly done, and every line he gives is perfectly delivered. And there's especially the scenes where he's talking to Ripper, and he's like in the room with him, and he's like, "No, I didn't know that, Jack." And like you can feel that the panic going on in this guy that he won't let show on his face, but you can feel it. It's really, really good. The actual performance of the titular character of Dr. Strangelove is very over the top. Possibly even a little too much. Not much too much, but maybe just a hair too much. I don't know. It might actually be perfectly calibrated. It's hard to say, but it is by far the most overtly comedic thing in this movie. It's the one thing more than anything else that is played as a joke, whereas most of the jokes are actually played pretty straight, and the humor comes from the innate absurdity of the situation or what is being said, or just the line delivery. Like a lot of George C. Scott's lines are incredibly funny, and it's not that he's playing them comedically, but he is playing them with so much high energy that like you can't help but laugh anyway, even though he's not necessarily playing it like it's a joke. And yes, before you put in the comments, I already know there's the whole story about how Kubrick told him, oh, well, we'll have some practice takes for you to go over the top with it, and then we'll dial it back, and I won't use any of these. And then he used mostly practice takes. I actually don't know if that was ever confirmed. I know it's been floating around, and I know including some people involved in the production have said it, but like the last time that I remember looking at, the source was James Earl Jones, but James Earl Jones doesn't share any scenes with George C. Scott. He's not in the war room scenes. He's in the plane, so how would he know that? I don't know. Part of me kind of doubts that that's what happened. I don't doubt that George C. Scott said he'd never work with Stanley Kubrick again. Lots of people said they'd never work with Stanley Kubrick again. I'm just not convinced of the accuracy of that specific thing happening. Although, given his performance, I could buy it, and I see why that has proliferated, whether it's true or not. But his performance, I think, is the standout performance of the movie. Like, everybody's doing real good work here, but he's, is gold. Solid gold. I love him in this. And as I kind of hinted at the front, this whole thing still feels way more relevant than it should, because you'd think, given that this is a Cold War era movie dealing with Cold War era fears, the very specific fear of the bomb, you'd think this would feel kind of dated. Like a lot of Cold War stuff does. This does, it does a little, but mostly for aesthetic reasons, not for core thematic ones, because yeah, the bomb might be the object that's the thing everyone's worried about, but ultimately this is a story of the world being run by idiots. More than anything, that's what this is about. Idiots in the White House, idiots in the military, idiots in Russia. It's just a whole bunch of idiots who think they know what they're doing, barreling the world towards destruction. And even when they realize they're doing it and try and change course, they still can't manage to do that, because in addition to being idiots, they're also not very good at what they do. So, yeah, all of that remains frighteningly relevant to this day. So, while it is still, thankfully, I think, funny enough that it doesn't become sort of depressingly prophetic, but if you were thinking, you were like, oh, let's see what people were worried about back in the Cold War, we'll have a laugh because they thought that stuff was going to happen. But you actually drill down into the themes. Yeah, they're relevant as heck. But thankfully, not to the point that it makes it no longer funny. This is still really funny. And the other Kubrick movie that I had liked when I had watched it before, I have not rewatched it in probably about 18 years, is Clockwork Orange, and I'm terrified to rewatch that one. And I think that's just a case of I watched it at the point in my life where I was going to appreciate it, and I don't think I'm that person anymore. But this, I think, is going to continue to be what I hold up as like, look, I don't hate everything Kubrick did. I like this movie. You know what? I love this movie. This movie is terrific. I won't mince words just because I don't like most of Kubrick's movies and think the man was a jackass. This is a great film. And it's still funny. And it's still worth rewatching. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Have you seen it? Have you rewatched it lately? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and is indeed how I was commissioned to take a look at this movie. Any amount of support you can help me there is greatly appreciated, but don't worry too much about it. Take a relaxed attitude around here so you can come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lupfula, Daphne Matthews, Kay Johnston, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Snark Shark, Oliver B, Mystic Shadow, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Magdalena, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Twilord, Tracy Scrabbit, Palba Rabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and additionally from the lower tiers of support, I'd also like to thank Isabel Lovelace, Hey Chica, and Lee Campo. What are you guys doing? Oh my goodness, who's back there? Oh, Worm, why do you do this? Ah!